There we are. We're live.
Fabulous.
Hello.
We're lively recording.
We're live to us. We're live to ourselves.
Yes, we're live to each other. And thank you for joining us on this uploaded video over here. We're very glad that you've taken the time. We look forward to seeing your comments, and hopefully we'll be able to get into the comments and respond as if we were in the live chat comments. This is History After Dark. It's daytime now. This is very peculiar. I feel like I feel like I've been brought out of my crypt, and I dislike it. It's early. It's just gone 9:30 in the morning. That exists. There's a 9:30 in the morning, if you didn't know. And here we are, and we're going to do another one of our heroes. Shall I do the disclaimer?
Please.
Yeah.
Please.
Well, there we go.
Go for it.
And welcome to History After Dark, friends. We called it that because we did make it when it was winter and dark and in the evening, but it also works regardless of the time of day in the season, because this is where we come. It's a space for us. I was going to say a safe space, but it's absolutely not. This is not a safe space, friends. This is a place where we come to let our freak flags fly. We are very good on our other social media platforms, paragons of grace and ladylike decorum, but here we like to do a 4-letter expletive. We like smut, filth, innuendo, innuendo. This is not a place for the faint-hearted. If you are in an open plan office with a judgmental boss, put a headphone in. If you're in a car, a cafe, a yoga studio with a small child, I don't know why I've been a yoga studio with a small child. They let goats in there. Why not kids? This small child in my head is called Timmy. As you can see from the mug, Timmy is a problem. Timmy is the kind of child that hears the one depraved thing one time, takes it away, locks it in his mind palace, takes it to school with him. He then repeats it in front of his teacher, who in my mind is Miss Honey. Miss Honey doesn't know what it means. She has not watched History After Dark, and thus she breaks the first cardinal rule of History After Dark, which is if you don't know what it means, don't Google it. It's not for you, and that's fine. Not everything is for everybody. So she Googles it. She is now utterly traumatized, and thus you get called up to school. You've got to explain why Timmy understands this thing, and also you've got to hand over your credit card details because Miss Honey now needs a comprehensive amount of psychiatric treatment, and that's on you. So put a headphone in. Alternatively, you can always watch on the playback. I say that it is always worth watching us live or indeed here. Philippa's not editing this, so what's going to happen is going to happen. There has been one occasion where where we did say something that was so unspeakably depraved that we did have to yeet that footage into the sun. It's not happened for a while, which to me means one of three things. Either we've got better at what we say and about guarding our behaviour. Unlikely. Second, we're due another snafu. More likely. 3, the one that's most likely for me, is that we now have no sense of where the line is. The bar is in hell. And we've just been saying borderline criminal shit for the last 6 months. So buckle up and join in. With that being said, we hope you are all adults. I was going to say, Lucas, go to bed, but you should be at school.
He is at school. He is.
Lucas, go to school.
He is. He's being Timmy. His teacher's not Timmy at school, so we're safe.
So if you are hopefully an adult, we can't control what you do. Nevertheless, we will never approve this being a drinking game. That's not the message we share. We also will never offer you legal advice. Please don't sue us. We're not responsible for your renal function. With this beautifully handcrafted, bespoke disclaimer, it's very clear what's going to happen today. There is no illusion. This is not a princess tea party, friends. There is going to be some swearing. So if at any point you come to this comment section, or indeed any of our other social media comment sections, and say, it's very good, I like the history, but do you have to swear? It's so unladylike. First of all, we're British. We love the word fuck. I use it like it's a comma. We also know what you're doing. You want us to pin that comment so that other people can come and humiliate you, because that's your kink. And you know what? I'm never going to kink shame you. But if you want to go and be ritually humiliated, there is a wonderful lady, I'm sure. I call her Persephone. She's in a basement in Brighton. It's got red walls and lots of leather. And she will happily stand on your bollocks for money. She's consented. You've consented. Kink without consent is not okay. Don't bring it here. Thank you very much. This is History After Dark. Let's talk about Isaac Newton.
I don't think we've now got into like Greek mythological figures in basements.
My name by deed poll last year. I thought I've never had a middle name. I got really excited. It didn't even occur to me to start with. Until I was actually about to press submit, and I wanted Persephone, but nobody can pronounce it or spell it. And I was like, I'm going to have enough trouble spelling my surname. I don't need the ball ache of trying to spell Persephone. You're going, Catherine Persephone, Ibotson.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you're right.
Just give up. Yeah, that's it. That's the one. In fact, maybe I should start doing that. People say Ibbotson, go, no, it's Ibotson.
Ibot. No, it's not bucket, it's bouquet.
Bouquet, yeah.
Bouquet, resident, the lady of the house.
New hobby. It's my name. Well, sort of.
There's going to be a whole conspiracy on the internet that when you comment, it's actually I bot son. It's a bot's son. We can start.
Hello. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. That's my new petty game. Okay. Isaac
Newton. Let's do Christopher Newton.
Yeah. So here's the man himself. Got a little picky of him up.
Very wistful.
He looks very thoughtful, doesn't he? He looks pensive.
Pensive. That's a good word.
He's pensing there.
I think he's a man who did do a lot of thinking, as we shall find out. Yeah. But he was born severely premature. I've read a couple of accounts. It doesn't say exactly. One says between 2 and 3 months premature. I mean, 3 months premature would be insane. He's born in 1643, just to put it into some context. As the civil wars are kicking off, and he's severely premature. So let's say 2 months premature. Either way, it does incredibly well to survive a day. He's born in a hamlet called Woolsthorpe in Lincolnshire on the 4th of January, 1643, or by the old calendar, Christmas Day, 1642. But let's not complicate things. And his mother said that he could have fit into a quart pot. A quart is like 2 pints, or I don't know what people would be able to equivalent a quarter of a gallon or 2 pints. So he's tiny, basically. I hope she hadn't actually tried to stick him in a quart pot. I think
just to check,
just to see how she's going to explain the size of him. He actually, good news was he lived till he was 84. So this tiny baby.
Wow.
Severely premature, born in the mid 17th century. If you believe that someone's looking over us, then perhaps he was looked over and kept alive for the reasons that we shall go through. His father had died 3 months before he was born. So not only is he born severely premature, he's born to a single mother. He's named after his father. He was also Isaac Newton. He was born the same year that Galileo Galilei died. So, proof positive reincarnation, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
His mother remarried when Isaac was still a toddler. And the stepfather didn't want Isaac. So his mother left him with her mother. So he was actually raised by his maternal grandmother. And his mother went on to have to live with her new husband and went on to have another 3 children. He was a minister called Barnabas Smith. Very kind man, clearly.
That's how I describe him. But there we go.
Yeah, I know, right? He died in 1653, and I'll go on to that. Changed Isaac's life a bit, but this separation. So he's separated from his mother. Clearly, his stepfather isn't interested in him. So and there's childhood trauma, insecurity, building up in Isaac, which haunts him for his entire life. He's sort of known for getting angry, getting frustrated. So I actually think, if someone's got a lot of trauma, anger, very often what you're actually seeing is the manifestation of sort of frustration and fright. But anyway, so he sort of gets very in later life, he gets very when he's publishing his work, he can get very defensive and stuff. And anyway, you can kind of, if you want to sort of psychoanalyze him and link it back to his to this childhood trauma and this separation anxiety, etc. Because he himself, so here's an example. In 1662, he sits down and does sort of a work of introspection, if you like, a little journal about his sins. And he remembers, and in his own words, threatening my father and mother Smith to burn them and the house over them. And he would have been, so his stepfather dies in 1653. So he's less than 10 years old at the time that he's you know.
Yeah, that's starting to get into the realms of we need to talk about Kevin, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
so he's
that's like,
I wonder if his mind was very advanced. Like, obviously,
he went straight to arson. He went straight to arson.
It would be 12 for other children, but about 9 for him.
Yeah, I think it's sad when you think of it. You know, he's, because I don't know what the context of that comment was, but he's not able to see his mother. He's not able to live with his mother. He's got 3 half siblings. He's been abandoned effectively, and this, anyway. So, and he is, like I say, known that when his work would be published, he would become very anxious. I think there's nothing really particularly unusual about that. I mean, everyone who presents any piece of work is always anxious about how it's going to be received, especially if you think about how groundbreaking some of his work was. You know, he's literally, we'll come on to it, but he's sort of he's taking something that people have taken for granted, and he's trying to explain it and stick anyway. So, but he apparently obsessively so, and would defend it quite aggressively. I think he had this argument with Edmund Halley at one point, and he just basically brushes him aside and says, look, I've studied these things and you haven't, almost like, just fuck off, you know, like. Anyway, so he was a very curious and practical child, like you say, Catherine. I think he was a big thinker from the beginning. He enjoyed creating things. He actually created when he was I don't know what age he was, but he built a miniature grain mill which was powered by a mouse on a wheel, which actually ground up grain to make flour.
I love it.
How cute is that? So, I mean, that's amazing. So he attended a grammar school, King's School in Grantham, where he lodged with a local apothecary. So that gave him an early exposure to chemistry. Later on he had an interest in alchemy. So he gets exposure to this quite early on. Now, like I say, his stepfather died in 1653, making his mother a widow for the second time. She wanted her eldest son Isaac, to manage her estate or her farm. So she took him out of school, and he's 12 by this point. He's not, however, suited to farm management. He hasn't got the aptitude, he hasn't got the attitude, he just wants to sit around reading books. So fortunately, the family didn't persevere with trying to force him to do that, and they took the pragmatic approach, and he went back to the grammar school. On the suggestion of his uncle, later on, he was admitted to Cambridge. His uncle had been I don't know which side, actually, I couldn't work out which uncle this was, but his uncle had graduated from Trinity College at Cambridge, so he'd suggested he should go there. So 1661, Isaac goes off to Cambridge. This is in the midst of the scientific revolution. So he's really, you know, he's there in a very exciting time. He's a little older than the other undergraduates at this point because of that break in his studies at grammar school. But nonetheless, he's there. He's also got to earn some money. So he waits tables. He cleans the rooms it says services the rooms, so I'm going to assume clean, of wealthier students. But he's not getting off academically. He's not getting off to a particularly strong start. He didn't demonstrate any of the genius that, of course, we retrospectively know that he does demonstrate. He's on a standard curriculum for his first 3 years. He doesn't get to do the advanced science that he was absolutely. He is fascinated by it, though. So he does a lot of reading and sort of thinking and note making in his spare time. He graduates without honours or distinction. But like I say, he's been keeping this sort of second line of study going while he's there. And he's made, it's called notes, but presumably like a notebook. I'm not going to try the Latin, I don't think, title of it, but it translates to certain philosophical questions. I mean, I say it's titled. This is like if you make a list and you stick whatever you think is going to make sense to you later on the top. In which apparently he discovered the new concept of nature by which the framework of the scientific revolution was provided. I don't know what that means, but there you go. And that it's that book that gained him the title, or the description of being a scholar. And from that, he managed to secure finance to do a further 4 years of study. So it's quite incredible. This second line that he did on his own, this is what actually secures him as a scholar. So he's still there in Cambridge in 1665, when the bubonic plague breaks out. Of course, famously kills a lot of people in London at the time, but of course it's not going to be contained to London. And Cambridge closes its doors, and Newton goes back to his home in Lincolnshire for 2 years. Unsurprisingly, he doesn't get his elbow, he doesn't roll up his sleeves to his elbows and get dirty and get into the farm work. He's sort of loving idling around, and it's supposed to be here that he comes up with his most famous question: why did the apple fall straight down from the tree? Why doesn't it go a little bit to the side or upwards? Why is it going straight down? Although the bit about it hitting him on the head is supposed to be untrue. That's a little bit of it. That's an elaboration. But he does tell this story quite often himself throughout his life. And it's not that he came up with the theory of gravity by watching an apple fall. It's that sparks the question in his mind. But he returns to Cambridge in 1667 after it's safe to do so. He's elected a minor fellow at Trinity College, and he works as a maths professor, as far as I understand, until 1696.
That's a long career.
Eh?
That would be a long
he's
career.
alive. For being a premature baby, he was alive for a very long time.
Very long time.
300 years, amazing. 1669, he had received his Master of Arts degree, where he'd come across the work of, no, this is going to start to get into science stuff this isn't our bag, but Nicholas Mercator's work on the infinite series, and that sparked him off writing his de analysis. Anyway, the analysis, I presume, explaining his own research and results. He shared that work untitled. I mean, literally, if you just called it the analysis, that's not a proper title, is it? Come on, Isaac, you need to get some better titles. And he shared that work with his mentor, another Isaac Barrow, who then went to share it on further to the British mathematician John Collins. He shows it him in June 1669. In August 1669, he fesses up as it's not his work, it is actually the work of Isaac Newton. He says he's very young. He's not actually very young at this point. He's in his 20s, but he describes him as very young, but of an extraordinary genius and proficiency in these things. And that is what brought Newton to the attention of the mathematical world for the first time. And sort of, well, I'm not picking up his work, so we'll go into that in a bit. But that he basically, so he doesn't. It's interesting. He doesn't start off. He's not a prodigal son or whatever you'd call it. Anyway, he's not straight. He's not recognized as some sort of genius from the beginning, and it's clear that it's his own work, his own interest, his curiosity, I suppose, that eventually gets him noticed. I don't know how much I want to, but he does become a Sir. I'll just quickly mention this because I don't know if it's picked up elsewhere, because he's knighted by Queen Anne in 1705. He was also a member of Parliament for 2 terms. He never married. which is a shame. I suppose he was getting his geek on too much to have a family. Yeah, so he ends up living with his niece near Winchester, and like I say, he died at 84, which is incredible. But you can kind of, this might seem a bit mean, but you can kind of get the impression he was slightly premature from he's a very slight man. He looks from his portraits anyway. But yeah, so very interesting. I haven't even touched on, maybe, do you want me to slightly touch on religion?
I get there a bit because
you've got there a bit as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I miss anything that you want to add in, you can always add it in.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll leave it there. But yeah, so that's sort of how he starts coming to the attention of the scientific and mathematical worlds.
Fabulous.
I feel really bad for him. His mum's a tit, and his stepdad
was a tit. Although I don't know that his mother remarried again, so maybe she learned her lesson. I don't know.
Or
although if you're twice widowed,
like, and didn't want her.
Maybe.
I know it's fairly uncommon that somebody at this time, usually if someone is widowed with a child, particularly a son, the husband's family step in and take some sort of wardship or custody. You know, where is his dad's family equally?
So his dad was I can't remember what his dad did. Sorry, I can't remember. But I'm not sure there was much of an estate, which might explain why his mother remarried so quickly.
Yeah. It's time for word of the week. And
yes,
friends, you're going to be pleased to know it is my week, which means, of course, it's time for some cant. You can't. So, if I was to say or to use the phrase twiddle poop, whom or what would I be describing or referring to? Twiddle poop, 2 words. Twiddle 1 word. Poop the second one.
I mean, it sounds like some form of nonsense.
Well, lots of these words sound like nonsense.
I mean, like, it's referring to something to say, oh, I'm sick of your nonsense. That's ridiculous. That's absolute twiddle poop.
Oh, no, it's not. It's not that.
Oh, okay. That was too obvious. I went down the obvious route.
Twiddle does sound like dismissive term.
As in something to do with yarn?
It refers to a type of person or some. You're using it because you have noticed something about an individual that you think is defining, and you're like, that one over there. See that one? Twiddle poop.
Is it like somebody who fidgets a lot?
No.
Someone that goes to the toilet a lot.
No, Catherine. That's just you, babe.
Catherine.
Shall I tell thee?
Please do, fair maiden, for we knoweth not.
I'm not quite sure how they've got here, and that's why I picked it. But it means an effeminate-looking man. A twiddle poop. An effeminate-looking man. I don't know why.
No, I don't get there, but it's.
But there you go.
Get the link. Yeah.
At least it's not offensive.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe you would fight if you were
there at the time. Yeah.
Maybe it would be highly offensive. Who can tell?
Well,
right. So I am picking up the middly bits. Isaac Newton's sciencey stuff and jobby stuff. I'm just going to caveat very quickly that science is absolutely not my bag. I am going to do my best, but it is unlikely that I know what half of these words mean, even a little bit. So Philippa touched on this on these plague years, and they are traditionally presented as these years of miracle, the Anni Mirabilis, in which Newton discovers, develops, has these amazing breakthroughs, including apple falling from tree. Worth pointing out that lots of things are traced to these years in their foundational or even more active ways. However, prior to this, he has had these years of focused study, not on the study he's been asked to do, granted, but focused study and access to the resources. So the things that are coming out when he has this remove away from university, the true foundations have arguably been laid down before. And there is a lot. We hear about people being polymathic, but there are a few people that I've encountered that appear to be as polymathic as Sir Isaac Newton. And that's coming from somebody who doesn't really understand what he's doing, but it sounds very impressive. So he does a lot of, he makes these mathematical discoveries. He makes a discovery in something known as quadratures that we now call integration. I looked that up. I still don't understand it. What Isaac Newton appears to be very good at is recognizing patterns. Through these investigations and these pattern noticings, he shapes what is now today known as calculus. I'm going to give a definition: the inverse relation of differentiation and integration.
I read that too, and I was like, I have no idea.
I think I have something.
I'm not going to pretend that I know what that means. I'm not going to insult any of you because you can Google same as me, and maybe you'll make a better fist of understanding what that means. In any case, this calculus thing is where the later dispute about the him or Leibniz thing, it's beginning at this point. And as Philippa pointed to, when it comes to Isaac Newton's work, and his discoveries and his publishing of them and his letter writing of them, one thing that is virtually universal in all of them is that there ends up being a conflict with somebody about it. Newton is not a person who can let a slight, an insult or a perceived insult lie. He is going to come for your neck and he's not going to back down. Regardless, this discovery of calculus, question mark discovery, not going to go into a fight with Leibniz, it is pointed to as this moment, because in 1666 he creates a article, a document, a paper entitled "To resolve problems by motion, these following propositions are sufficient." Good to know. And this is, we're told, the thing that positions him as, at that time, being one of the leading, if not the leading, mathematician in Europe. He, of course, doesn't stay simply with mathematical theorem. He also investigates optics. And to do this, he uses something that I certainly became familiar with in secondary school, the prism, that makes very pretty light things. So he brings in a light through a hole in the shutter, and he puts it through this prism. There had been a question as to whether light is homogeneous or not. If it had been, then when it goes through a prism, it should have made like a round splotch on the wall. I'm probably explaining this like a 5-year-old, and maybe I'm missing something, but this is how I've understood it, so bear with. However, as we know, if we've looked through a prism, as you can see in this picture, it doesn't create a splotch. You see the colours separate out. Newton then writes an essay, an investigation called Of Colours. This he puts into another of his student notebooks, probably, we think, again in 1666. While he's doing this prism stuff, he's also looking at mechanics. And by that, the notion of motion. Sounds
like a song title.
Yeah, he wants to understand how bodies move through space and what's going on. They're calling this mechanics. I always understood this as being part of physics. Correct?
I think so, yeah.
Maybe.
I'm pretty sure.
I don't know how the sciences were divided at that point.
Well, this is the thing as well, which we'll get when we get to the alchemy bit. Obviously.
Well, there was no chemicals and no plants and animals and stuff. So let's go with physics.
Yeah, good. So he
I remember
he
the
then starts up
scientific community.
he then starts up another notebook that he titles fairly dismissively "The Waste Book." In
Oh.
this waste book, he
God
starts
wants to come
talking
up with
about
better titles.
yeah.
It's a bit
In this
rubbish,
waste
isn't
book,
it?
he starts talking about the effect of impact on objects. So immovable force, irrepressible force, immovable body stuff. There is the question of something called circular motion. And in these studies, he isn't just coming straight out of his own mind. He is looking at the work of others. So when it comes to motion, he's looking at the work of, for example, Descartes, or he is in some cases in line with Descartes, but then he differentiates too. He's looking at Galileo Galilei's work, because part of understanding physical motion on Earth, it also then can be used to explore and understand the motion of the heavenly bodies. So trying to understand what is happening on Earth, the effect of, and why things get held to Earth, why gravity is functioning. Newton is trying to figure out all of this. Things like centrifugal force, that I believe is one of the ways that we explain the motion of the Earth and the solar system. I could be wrong there. That's what I think I understood from Googling it. However, all of these studies, as we know, did take him off the path of what he should have been doing as an undergraduate. This must have been fairly distracting. He's understanding how colours in the spectrum work, how he's trying to figure out how the planets move around, why things stick to Earth and don't fly off. And he's also made calculus. He's been a busy boy.
Yeah.
So he, all very nearly, as you said, Philippa, he's not covered himself with any distinction when it comes to the end of his university career. However, he does manage to get a scholarship, possibly because he had a patron within the college, a man called Humphrey Babington. So he gets this scholarship, and that helps him to sort of stay on. In 1667, when he returns to Cambridge, he has to weigh up: is he going to go for election for a fellowship and possibly remain at Trinity going on? He didn't have to, but he does this. He becomes, first of all, a minor fellow. He gets his master's, and then he becomes one of the major fellows. This gives him an income of, at that time, about £60 a year. Part of that, most of that, is that he gets a place to sleep and he gets food. And on top of it, there's hardly anything for him to do in terms of a job. He can potentially earn extra money if he chooses to tutor. And he did, in fact, go on to tutor. Not quite sure if he was paid. It appears he was tutoring some people who are referred to as his fellow commoners. He's there. He's at Trinity for 28 years. Following his scientific understanding, I believe it's pronounced a Lucasian professor of mathematics. I think the word is Lucasian. So he is appointed Lucasian professor of mathematics. When he is appointed to it, it's a fairly new establishment position. It perhaps doesn't carry the prestige of other professorships. However, it is a chair in the university, and there aren't that many. Interestingly, in later centuries, a very famous individual holds the exact same chair, and that is Stephen Hawking. So it becomes incredibly prestigious. From being Lucasian professor of mathematics, he then gets a further income, about £100 a year. This is added to the Trinity Fellowship and also to money he's getting out of his estate. Thus, time at Cambridge suddenly becoming, or has been, fairly comfortable. This also, having this private fund, also means that he doesn't have to be ordained in the church, because at a certain point, when it comes to a university study, becoming a minister in the church is a way to get a stipend and support yourself. There is going to be a reason why becoming ordained is going to be a problem for Newton. The other thing about the Lucasian chair, this professorship of mathematics, is that there's not a lot of job to do. He does have to give lectures. We are told that in 1669, one of the first lectures he gives is on optics. And but he doesn't do a lot of other work, really. He is naturally somebody who's going to be trying to communicate with the Royal Society, sending them letters, involved in correspondence. Somebody who's quite high up in the Royal Society, who's quite outspoken, is another scientist called Robert Hooke. And Newton and Hooke do not get on. When Newton writes things, that one of the things he sends to the Royal Society, his ideas on optics, Robert Hooke is dismissive. And Newton is furious and sends a reply that is shady, shall we say, to say the least. There's this kind of back and forth, and by 1674, when he's in London, he does Newton's like, sod the Royal Society, I'm not making any contact with them this whole time I'm here. However, he did choose to go to the society, attend a society function the following year, and he found that he was greeted very respectfully and people wanted to talk to him. He therefore offers another paper. He sends them a paper called The Discourse of Observations, and which later becomes a book on optics. He also sends a hypothesis explaining the properties of light. So he is sending he sends these documents. This creates controversy. In these documents, in the hypothesis, there are supposedly, I haven't read it, I'll be honest, provocative references to Robert Hooke. Robert Hooke, when this document's being read before the Royal Society in 1675, stands up and says that the content is from his work, Micrographia. This is an accusation of basically plagiarism. When Newton hears about this, he is incandescent. He writes a letter that shows how incandescent he is. Hooke, whether or not this is the case, Hooke potentially, if he did say it, swiftly starts backpedaling. He's like, no. The person who told you that I said that misrepresented me. Of course, I've only got massive esteem for you, Isaac. And then Newton's like, oh, well then, if you've got esteem for me, then I suppose I will take the pins out of the eyes of that voodoo doll that I have been stabbing. This, of course, does not mean these two are friends. There will be some rows coming up. Another scientific investigation Newton takes on is alchemy, which I think for us we recognise as being potentially in the realms of magic, pseudoscience, but it was very much part of a discipline that would later be recognised as chemistry. Alchemy has now been removed from chemistry.
Damn.
So yeah, we can't make gold out of base metals. However, in 1670, Newton writes a manuscript that is titled "The Vegetation of Metals." In it, in the very first line, he talks about the idea that metals vegetate after the same laws, meaning of nature. I don't 100% know what that means. I'm assuming that it's about breakdown, and thus, if breakdown can occur, change can occur, and that's what, in my understanding, is the attempt of alchemy. It's an attempt to change base metal into something else. While he's doing the alchemical study, he's also engaging in theological study. So this and his reading, as we have seen, I think, Newton is a person who does march the beat of his own drummer, usually having built the drum out of the stuff he's made himself. And very swiftly, the orthodox understanding of faith that, let's remember, in a university setting, the expectation is that you are going to take some kind of cloth to fund your studies. So he is surrounded by churchmen. He then starts questioning that. And he delves into something called Arianism. How are we pronouncing this?
I know, because when I first saw Arianism, I thought, oh, that sounds
a bit
dodge.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't what I was thinking. So I'm not sure.
So it's spelt like Arianism, but it might be Orianism. This belief structure deviates far enough from the orthodox understanding of faith that it theoretically would have been deemed heresy. And that, of course, can lead you into a very sticky situation. Also, it is something that Cambridge is not going to tolerate. So Newton is, we know, smart enough to keep his thoughts to himself. However, he does seem to have truly held a faith that deviated from the orthodox. And so when ordination became a requirement, and for Newton, he would have been required to be ordained by 1675 at the latest, he knew that that would have meant him answering questions of faith that would have made it impossible if he was to answer honestly, and he seemed to have wanted to answer honestly, that it would have been very clear that he was a heretic. Big problems all around. He continues, while this theological development is going on, he continues alchemy, and in his alchemical writings, he does start this correspondence with Robert Boyle, and it is one that happens with no intermediary. So they've come to terms, at least, on that. In 1684, he gets a visit from Edmund Halley, who I believe is the person we know best for Halley's Comet. And there had been the Halley's Comet had gone through the sky, and much like apple falling, this had triggered some more questions in Newton's mind. Newton writes Halley a 9-page document entitled De Motu, or Concerning Motion. This is this notion of orbital dynamics that will then later appear in Newton's text Principia Mathematica, which dates to 1687. Newton has developed or landed on the concept of universal gravitation. This brings him into contact and ultimately conflict with Flamsteed, another person who works in a discipline. They end up falling out.
There's a pattern developing.
But equally, I don't think it's necessarily Newton's fault. He's very reactive, but he's also surrounded by arseholes.
I mean, they might be falling out with each other. Right? We're not looking at their relationship.
Him, I think Flamsteed, it's a case that what Newton seems to be doing is he asks these questions. So of Flamsteed, he's asking him about the motions of Jupiter and Saturn. And then he starts connecting it to the use of pendulums, and he wants to test it in the manner that Galileo had asserted that bodies would always fall with the same level of acceleration. So there is this kind of, they're working along similar lines, but it's one of those things that I think when somebody deviates and particularly puts together something that ultimately ends up bettering your work, you can respond one of two ways. You can respond with a notion this is collaboration, or you can feel like somebody's pissing on your chips. And I think a lot of the people that Newton encounters behave like he's pissing on their chips. So by around the start of 1685, Newton has come to a conclusion that, and I'm going to quote this, every particle of matter in the universe attracts every other with a force proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them.
Right.
That's what I thought.
Yep. That's why I quoted it, because I'm not going to try and pass that. I've got no idea how I would put that into words that aren't those. The following year, Newton then submits his findings, a manuscript, to the Royal Society. Haley then tells him that, thank you very much, your treatise is incomparable. I'm so pleased that you've dedicated it to me. Alas, Robert Hooke has said it's plagiarism. So there we go. What is also coming down the pike is the so-called Glorious Revolution. After the death of Charles II, the crown has passed to James II. He is publicly, outspokenly converted to the Roman Catholic faith. And as part of Newton's academic, but also his growing politics, he is called as somebody to represent Cambridge. He stands before Judge Jeffreys. He's called to answer to Judge Jeffreys. And then he's also back after the uprising of the Glorious Revolution. He is at that point, so in 1688, he is elected as one of the 2 Cambridge representatives to Parliament. He isn't leading the charge, but he does stand alongside people who are asserting that because of his Roman Catholicism, James has forfeited the throne. He talks about supporting the Glorious Revolution, or he stands in support, arguably, of the Glorious Revolution, and thus the creation of what is now the English mode of monarchy and government. And theoretically, therefore, the fact that you can't be a Roman Catholic and sit on the throne of England. As Philippa said, he does. So he doesn't stand for re-election after that Parliament was dissolved first, but later, 1701, 1702, he represents Cambridge in Parliaments once again, and he stands again in 1705. But he was rejected because there was some issue about him not really following the established church. The thing that, for me, doesn't get talked about enough, and it's because I think I work there, is Isaac Newton's effect on the mint, the Tower Mint, and also currency. So counterfeiting is a tale as old as time, but previously coin clipping was also a massive issue. When the coin, its face value matches its content, so it's got actual silver or even gold, clipping becomes a valuable procedure. And there has long been a government attempt to stop both counterfeiting, but also coin clipping. Newton is asked for his advice, and one of the things he suggests is that there should be a recoinage. In 1696, he is asked by the then Chancellor of the Exchequer, Charles Montague, if he would become Warden of the Mint. And he immediately accepts. And just as he has done countless times before, he throws himself into this hook, line, and sinker. When it comes to the recoinage, he is able to do something that is unprecedented. He was at one point apparently creating the rate of coinage reached £100,000 a week, with old coins brought in and then being recoined. When recoinage ended in 1698, the mint under his watch had coined a total of £6.8 million. That's in 2.5 years. The previous 30 years, That is twice the amount of coin that the previous 30 years had done. While the warden has lots of responsibilities, you know, finding ways to recoin, they are also in charge of apprehending and prosecuting coin clippers. He doesn't really want to do that bit. He would rather make somebody else. But then he said, no. The Treasury said, no, it's definitely your job. And so he became a justice of the peace in all home counties. He takes depositions in taverns and jails. He prosecutes successfully 28 forging coiners. And apparently over 100 were pursued while he was warden. While he's in charge of the mint, he also institutes a new design, a new invention, something that I think is now common on all coins globally. If you have, I mean, coins are going out of fashion, but if you look at a coin in your purse, particularly like the round ones, they will have edging. It's called either reeding or milling. So at the edge of the coin, but also around it. And this means that not only is counterfeiting more difficult, but clipping is much more difficult, if not utterly impossible. One thing is that there is somebody who is higher up in the mint than him, and but he's not there. So basically, Newton's doing his job as well. As Philippa said, his niece comes to live with him, and she is, by all accounts, very beautiful, and apparently gets the attention of Charles Montague, the treasurer who invited Newton to take charge of the mint. When Montague is drawing up his will in 1706, he leaves Catherine, Isaac Newton's niece, £3,000 and all his jewels, quote, as a small token of the great love and affection I have long had for her. 7 years later, a new addition to the will is going to bequeath her £5,000, plus a grant of the rangership and lodge of Bushy Park. Bushy Park is near Hampton Court. It's very beautiful. And also giving her the manor, a manor in Surrey. Flamsteed, the guy who was doing Motion of the Planets, who Newton would have a falling out with, talks about these grants, starts talking about the values of them, and basically is saying, your niece is the mistress of Halifax, Lord Montague. And almost certainly she was. Newton almost certainly knew, but doesn't seem to have taken any action about it, or talked about it, or even seemed to have cared that much. He's mostly concerned with the fact that he's the warden and there's a master of him, a master above him, a master coiner above him, who is getting more money, but has essentially decided that this is going to be something he lets somebody else do. So Newton is doing all of their jobs, and it's not good for him. So when the other master dies, and Newton is one of the first people to go from being warden to master. He would spend 27 years as master of the mint, doing all sorts of wonderful things and making lots and lots of lovely money, and earning lots and lots of lovely money himself, because there is I suppose, like a perk. The more you coin, the more your salary is, which is weird. So if you make more money in a particular year, like literally form it and put it out into the economy, then your salary goes up, which to me just sounds like a license for screaming inflation. But I'm guessing you have to have the gold in the first place. I don't really understand why you would get more money for making physically more money, but there we go. This means that because he's so good at making coin, really a lot of coin very quickly, much quicker than anybody else, he is going to, at his death, be a very wealthy man. He also starts to get a better relationship with the Royal Society over time, particularly after the death of Robert Hooke in 1703. He is then going to go balls to the wall and throw himself into the Royal Society, and he would eventually be elected as the president, and he would stay president, looking over all of the affairs of the society right up until his death. That is as quick as I could make that. I've missed things out, but I've gone on for ages. I apologise. There is a lot there.
He did a lot.
He did.
Did I miss anything massive? Because I feel like I tried to cover the bases, but there is so much, and that could have been 3 hours.
I would
think you did
imagine
very
it's
well.
probably safe to Google the work of Isaac Newton.
Yes, and maybe you'll have a better
Burning
understanding
desire
it than I
to
did.
expand on any of that. It sounds exceptionally complicated.
Yeah.
He just got so much done. He must have been constantly.
Didn't
Well, when
have
he
to
lived to be 84 and he kept away from women, that frees up quite a lot of time, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It does.
no women,
children,
no TikTok.
women.
Yeah.
No TikTok, no social media.
No doom
Yeah.
scrolling.
It's
So,
amazing what you could do without,
Yeah.
without all that.
When you're sitting under a tree waiting for apples to fall on your head, you know, you've got time.
plenty of time to
There's-
dwell on. Yeah.
There is a concern, though, isn't there, actually, that we're going to lose? Like, there could be some brilliant minds out there that are never
Watching cat
bored
videos. Yeah.
watching cat videos.
But then equally, in terms of knowledge acquisition, I think it's something that they say, is it the average 7-year-old or the average 7th grader? I can't remember. It's 7 something, has as much scientific understanding as some of the greatest minds of the Enlightenment.
I think they could. I don't think they have it necessarily.
I think within the curriculum, it's on offer in the curriculum.
On offer,
essentially.
it's very different. We know a lot
Yeah.
of people who left
Picking their
school.
noses and eating
who
smarties.
didn't.
So I wouldn't.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not optimistic.
no, I'm not optimistic either. But
You
that's
said
only
you
knowledge
thumbs down.
already.
You're doing this. You went thumbs down. It was like
No.
the thumbs down sign. What?
There's knowledge already known, but I'm talking about like what we don't know. Nobody knew they needed to think about gravity or light refraction or calculus or the motions of the planet
Yeah.
until someone
Until
got bored enough, like Newton.
got bored enough to go, what shall I think about?
Yeah, but
today?
there's this thing, isn't there, about no one gets bored, so nobody looks for stuff that your mind doesn't wander to
Yeah.
anything you don't already know or have a habit in.
Well, one
So-
thing I think is wild is that we know what space looks like hundreds, if not thousands, of light years away. But there are vast swathes of our own ocean floors that we
Most
have
of it, isn't
never
it?
looked at.
Most of it, isn't it? Isn't it like
Mm,
in the
Yeah.
90% or something that we
Yeah.
don't?
it's very dark, and there's.
I mean, I
obviously
don't want to go there
lots
personally.
I don't want to go there either. But like
Hang
my
on.
husband always says to me, he always goes, you know, if we hadn't had like the domination of the church, then or religion in general, then scientists we would have got to space quicker. And I'm like, no. We would not have anything, colonies on Mars. That wouldn't have happened. The reason why we went up is
Heavens.
because we were looking at the heavens.
Yeah, and avoiding the
We haven't
hell,
looked at
I
our
imagine.
seas yet.
No,
We've gone to the moon. We've sent a rover to Mars, and yet we haven't gone to the bottom of the sea or the ocean, rather. So yeah, no, religion is the reason we've done that, as far as I'm concerned.
there's some freaky. I bet there's some absolute freaky stuff down the bottom of the
Well,
ocean.
some of the
very,
animals, those
very ugly
sightless,
fish, aren't there?
colourless.
Seeing some of them, you're like, what is that?
Yeah.
Don't fuck with it. Don't fuck with that. Are we going to do a new try of a new widows? So
Oh, I don't know how this is going to fit on with my headphones.
we have discussed the fact that
Put
half
it on
promise
top.
post bag that has frequently got to the point where it's the answer is always
You know
poison.
what to
Well,
do.
friends, the answer is always poison. So we're wondering if the widows can come out of their little veils for something else. And so what it's going to be is it's going to be a trifecta of a mini rant. We get annoyed by most things. We're going to make a note of them each week.
Oh, I know what we can do this week. I've just thought of something. Yeah.
And then we're going to
Super.
have a little mini rant. We're all going to have a sentence each to talk about what's really pissed us off. So the widows are coming out. We hope you enjoy it.
We might have the same one. Oh,
Well, I've got a feeling we might.
hang on. I don't know if I can for this one. There we go.
Yeah, it works.
There we go.
Right, I'm going to go
Definitely.
first in case
Go then.
Philippa's picked the same one as me. People who like to call themselves professional historians, but manage to bring the profession into disrepute by making rather unpleasant social media posts, describing women mentioned in those posts as C words and broads, and then doing a dirty delete once they've been called
Oh,
out.
was it deleted?
Was it a
Dirty delete. Mm-hmm.
screenshots live forever?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got one.
Live
As soon as don't ever think you can post reductive, misogynistic crap.
Fortunately,
someone
some
has
damage
to-
has been done.
Yes.
So
About time.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But interestingly, I thought that some of the words that person used to describe the person they were talking about were rather applicable to them. So maybe it was some form of projection.
Yeah.
On a
The accusation is the
subconscious level.
confession.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So dirty deletes. That's
Philippa,
my.
would you like to go? That's what's happened there is you've got something to rant about, but there's also been instant karma, which I love for you.
Yeah, I was.
Philippa, do you want to go next?
Miles.
Yeah. Well, that I was going to say that one.
Sorry.
But so maybe linked to that, but also the actual, without going, because I suppose but go into exactly what we're talking about. But these reductive posts in the beginning, I find so cynical. Yeah, these are people who are supposedly doing history channels and they want to do stupid things like, well, actually, there's two things that I hate about these sorts of channels. One, the amount of just historical fiction drama that they post about. Like, are you talking about history or are you talking about the arts? Like, what are you talking about? What
And
are
make
you
it
know?
clear. Make it clear which one you mean.
It's
as well.
clickbaity. It's like, which actor should have played Henry VIII? Who cares? Really? Why do you, it's like, it's a cynical post. It's for clicks. It's for likes. And then to do something like ask, who's your favorite this, or who do you hate the most out of these? What?
Yeah.
I find it, I find it really sickening. And that opens it up to answers like happened in this particular case that Catherine was talking about, and then some abominable answers and comments that came in after that.
Yeah. Which doesn't help the study of history, but also doesn't help with the current social situation for various human beings.
Yeah. I think that it is relevant because it's how human beings talk to each other and about each other right now.
Yes.
As well.
Like I don't like it either. Mine is, apologies, very London centric, but I have been on the tube 3 times this week, which is a lot for me. It's normally maybe like a couple or usually one time. And I've been in near to rush hour for most of them. And I'm just going to say that I don't think it's Londoners. If you are a visitor to London, we love having you. Thank you. Come spend your money. But when you are using the tube or the bus, there are 3 things that you need to follow. There is a queue at the bus stop. Even if you don't think it looks like a queue, there is a queue. Everyone knows who got there first. We're all looking at each other and we thumbs up, see? And we all know who should be going on that bus before us. Don't push in. We will know that you're not a Londoner. The other thing is, there is a side of the escalator you stand on and there is a side of the escalator that you walk on. Do that. Do that thing. And last, by no means least, and this one has really been fucking me off this week, it is the custom, nay, the rule, you let people off the fucking tube before you get on. This is not a fucking scrum. Stop it. Sorry.
Stop it.
Rage.
Oh,
one more, actually. If you're getting on a packed tube, take your backpack off and put it at your feet.
Yeah, you just hit everyone around you if you don't do that.
Mm.
I wear a backpack and yeah, always take it
Also,
off.
aren't you concerned the person behind you is going to pickpocket you?
Well, all
Put it
that,
between
yeah.
your feet.
Daft.
Yeah.
I actually thought, so I think you've got a fifth one if you think about it, because a few weeks ago you were saying how many people were listening to whatever it was on their phones without earphones.
Yeah.
Illegal. Should be illegal. It should
Unless
be
it's really good
illegal.
gossip, then maybe.
Put a headphone in. I don't want to hear your. It's not even out of a real speaker. I don't want to hear your tinny shit music.
So anyway, if any of the people around you do any of these things that really annoy you, you know
Get
what
rid
the
of it.
answer is.
Yeah.
Poison immediately.
Immediately, if not sooner.
Immediately, if not sooner,
I'm
indeed.
very angry. I'm very angry. and very
It
upset.
makes me angry.
I'm very angry and very upset. It's not hard.
I like that. I like that mini rant. It's like it gets it off our chest in
very
a more
beautiful.
timely
I
manner.
like this better. Hopefully, let us know in the comments. Let us know what you think. I hope you enjoy it because we did. And also, you can always send us things in. If something's really fucked you off, we are
Please
happy
send
to
it.
rant on your behalf.
Any screenshots of posts you think may well get deleted, please send them in.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
Oh
do
yeah.
that.
Do that. Do that.
Do that.
We're going to be.
We
We're
could
going to
do
be
a
the internet
weekly.
hawk.
A weekly they tried to clear this.
Start checking the Instagram again now because if
Yeah.
people are sending
We'll do a weekly like outing of people who've tried to delete their tweets.
Maybe we'll put it on the close friends. We'll name and shame on close friends.
Yeah, we could do that. Definitely.
No, there's going to be no editing of those screenshots. You're going to get to see their handle and everything. Fuck them. Fuck them.
That's it. Well, the plot thickens.
Here we go.
Right, okay, so I've got leggy bits today, but I think what is presumably coming out here is that this dude did a lot. He has a great legacy. I think when we score him, he's going to be quite a high scorer. I just need to get into my other MacBook. So,
oh God, everybody, hold on.
Gird your loins.
Hold on.
She's double fisting the tech. Oh,
What could possibly go wrong?
that's an American thing. I'm talking to our American guests. When they have two drinks, they call it double fisting.
And they're all still in bed.
Not what it means here.
They're all still in bed at the minute. So
over here, that's an OnlyFans thing. Don't Google it.
No, please
don't Google it.
Don't save yourself. So for me, I think the biggest part of Isaac Newton's legacy was if he hadn't discovered gravity, we'd have all floated off by now.
He didn't invent gravity, I've been told.
Okay, so some of this might touch on the bits that we've mentioned before, and I wasn't entirely sure what orders to put this in. So if you don't agree with the order I've put it in, then that's your problem because this is how I've done it.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously there's been lots of talk about the various papers he published with some interesting names that perhaps was one flaw in his abilities.
He wasn't a marketing expert, was he?
No, but you can't be good at everything, I suppose. And this is relevant to what I mentioned, in 1678, whilst he was the mathematics professor at Trinity College in Cambridge, he published the Principia Mathematico, the foundation of modern science. And it took him 2 years to write, which isn't too bad, but it encompassed 20 years of research. So I think the first thing that we've seen here is this man has an epic dedication to his cause. I mean, it's almost unrivalable, to be completely honest. And thank goodness he did. But yes, he went through the ups and the downs. He must have got very tired. He must have worked extremely hard. He certainly didn't get the best of friendships out of it. So I think it caused him a lot of blood, sweat and tears, but he was extremely persistent. So in this time, we've mentioned a lot of things, obviously, that he'd done, but the main things are he developed the theory of calculus, 3 laws of motion, and the most detailed account so far of the theory of universal gravitation. So all these things obviously still stand. And this, you add all these things together, and this gives us this revolutionary new description of the universe and how it functions, which is obviously massive. The universe as well as the achievement. Universal, yes. So this really is mostly what has cemented his reputation and what we know him for. And I would say, you know, because once work of that magnitude is out there, it cannot be ignored. Nobody can turn and say, no, I'm not using that, or no, that's not relevant to me. It's there. That's it. That's the end of it. And it also means, like any meta-analysis, you know, you can take all the things that have been written and postulated in writing, but then a lot of what had come before would have to have been reappraised. And one of the things that Newton said was, as well, was, you know, that there's value in reading other people's theories, presumably as long as they're his, and looking at all this sort of suggestion and evidence. But he was really one of the first people to say, you really have to look, you have to observe these things happening to know for sure that that's what is happening. He did concede that obviously sometimes you may not have done, you have to kind of look at what there is, and then you can proffer very probable, likely, and viable case scenarios. But he really did start to put this evidence, it's like evidence but better, on empiricism. So calculus, the mathematical study of continuous change. Okay.
No, don't got it. Still don't understand.
Okay. So the relationship between change of the differentials. So, for example, how much a slope is slopey. That's possibly not very scientific. There could be a gentle slope. It could be a big slope. It could be a slope that starts gradual and then gets a little bit steeper. Okay. And then in the content, so the distance that something covers, for example. And another fundamental aspect of this is, and this was quite a newer thing. People go, well, we start here and we finished here. Okay, what happens? And he would say, keep looking at instantaneous change. Don't go from here to here and there's not much in the middle. You keep looking at things only very tiny intervals of time. So one of you mentioned about how people look at, oh, when something falls, it just always falls at the same rate. Well, now we know that that's not true. The further something falls and the heavier it is, the more it gathers speed. But the way it gathers speed happens in a linear way. Do you know what I mean? It's no. Okay. Anyway, so we don't just look at what it started here and it finished here. It covered.
So it changes during that journey.
I'm sure other people understand this. You're not going to get me to. God love you for trying. God loves a trier.
If you drop something 1,000 feet and it takes 100 seconds, then they're going, oh, well, you know, that means that for every 10 seconds it dropped it. And it doesn't. It starts off slower and gets quicker.
Right.
So it's not
is this terminal velocity? Is this terminal velocity?
Yeah, that type of thing, I think.
I knew a thing.
I think. Okay, so it's used to model systems that change. And so therefore we see it heavily used in space exploration. So some of these things mentioned: telecommunication systems, computer science, engineering, medicine, pharmacology, business, meteorology, and music. So it's had this impact on so many things. I don't think we can overstate how significant this has been. So you can do it to use things like work out the trajectory of a projectile. So then we see that like in warfare, and we can use that to apply things to sports and all sorts of things like that. The speed of a moving object, the rates of change, of acceleration. And it's been used to study the behaviours of very complex systems like the motion of planets, which has obviously already been discovered. And as I was saying to ladies yesterday, we laugh at now. This sounds like, oh, but people didn't know. So they thought the planets were held in place by an invisible shelf. And that's what kind of out to now. We're like, how on earth did you think that worked? But how does this work? It's quite out. Before we knew things, we postulated things. This was the thing.
There's stuff we're thinking at the moment that people in the future are going to go, why the hell did they think that?
What on earth was wrong with these idiots for thinking that? So I
think it's going to be psychiatrics. I genuinely think they're going to look back in 100 years and be like, they thought the brain why that happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the main one. Yeah. So, and that, of course, the motion of planets is all part of the gravitational pull theory. And we can also look at the behavior of fluids, and it helps us to, this theory also helps us to understand how diseases are spread. So,
sorry. Cat and I's brains just went to the wrong place right there.
The trajectory of certain.
You said the word fluids. We made eye contact through the camera, and it was longer.
I kind of was like, I'm going to say this, and I'm not looking at Kat, but now, yes,
Sorry.
no, it's thank you. So the corruption of Philippa continues at ever
Rate
increasing
of knots.
trajectory.
At a rate
Okay.
that probably only Isaac Newton could do the
Yeah.
math for, to be
Right.
honest.
He's
We
invented
wouldn't be able
calculus.
to work it out if it wasn't for Isaac
I'm just
Newton.
gonna. I want to flag something quickly. I realised in my ramble I did not define what Orionism or Arianism is.
Oh,
I talked about his theology and I didn't say what that actually means. And I realised that perhaps not everybody would know what it means. So I'm just going to quickly chuck in here that if you are a follower of Orion or Arianism, then you do not believe that Christ is divine. So
I can see why people didn't.
it's
like
a belief that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, created by God, and thus cannot be the same as God.
Doesn't believe in the
So-
Trinity, does he? I don't think.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But because there's also like people who don't believe. I don't know where the Holy Spirit figures into this, but essentially it means that Jesus and God are different entities and Jesus is not divine. Sorry, I just thought I should probably flag that because that is why, because that's still viewed as heresy by
I can see why. Yeah.
He absolutely, most certainly believed in God and studied the Bible, etc.
Yeah.
So it wasn't.
He's
that
not an
he was-
atheist.
No.
But
here's
questioning
something
whether Jesus Christ is divine is a big bad for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot to say it. I apologise.
Here's something we can understand about calculus. The Romans used to use pebbles on counting boards to do addition and subtraction, and calculus is the Latin word for pebble.
Oh, I didn't know
That we
I didn't
can
know that.
understand. Apparently, this is what I read.
It doesn't make it clearer,
you know.
but thanks for that.
So,
I don't know what it is,
the actual
but that
fact
makes me
is
feel-
clearer, but we understand where the name comes from.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the start. It's the start. Right. So the name Leibniz has come up. Obviously, is one of his most famous nemesis. And nemesis.
Nemesis.
That's what he didn't like. Anyway, over who invented calculus. So Leibniz was like, yeah, I think you'll find it was me. And he was like, no. I actually discovered this like 20 years ago, but I never published it. And he goes back and finds all his old notes. And so at the time, they were both kind of claiming it. And it did look like Newton had discovered it first. Nowadays, I think the line mostly is that actually they probably both did discover it. Newton discovered it first, but didn't publish it. So they both discovered it, but they discovered it independently, which then caused a row. I mean, what are the odds?
I don't know. I think this sort of thing
Fairly high.
happens, quite often.
Yeah.
They were moving in the same circles,
Exactly.
with the same sorts of
Yeah.
schools of thought.
And science is moving
Anyway.
in a similar direction, etc.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say if somebody can imagine it, and even if someone has the capacity to verbalize it, somebody else has already done so and usually made a porn of it.
Either
You
way,
know that
I
if you
think
Google something.
Yeah,
If you
well,
Google something now, it's like, oh yeah, someone has already thought of that.
either way, I bet none of them were fun at parties. So,
Like
yes,
historians, to be fair.
being brought up around these ideas. As mentioned, he was in 1703 was elected as the president of the Royal Society. So this was obviously in itself no mean feat. It was, a recognition of the work he was doing, what he had achieved, and presumably what he was the assumption, rightly or wrongly, that he would continue to achieve highly and produce really good quality research and debate. And it was the Royal Society who in 1713 said, look, we need to sort out which one of you invented this, because this is just bloody ridiculous now. And that was kind of the conclusion that they came up with at the time. But apparently their hatred for one another was made very clear until both of them were dead. Even when one of them died, the other one still banged on about it. So that's what we like. We like a good petty feud.
Yeah.
Even though you're dead, I'm still
They took it to the grave.
Literally, yeah. in terms of legacy as well, you know, we're seeing so many positives about him, but it has been touched on, you know, he was a little bit volatile. He could be a little bit perhaps jealous, maybe a little bit petty, maybe a little bit spiteful, but maybe we can put that into context, and we don't necessarily know, because he's the most well known. His behavior is more documented and more noted perhaps than some of the others. You know, it could have been nearly all reactive. We don't know, we don't have every copy of every letter and but I do think he was a little bit like, I can't be doing you and your nonsense, how very dare you. I think for all he was, other people really valued him, whether that made him value himself more or whether he was very defensive, because I didn't realize he'd had I knew he didn't have a good relationship with his stepfather, but I didn't know how dysfunctional and toxic that was. So that may very well have affected how he reacted to people's criticism and making out like they were more important than him and that he was nothing. You know, that
he is a commoner, isn't he? At this, you know, he's supposed to be a commoner.
Yeah,
they don't like that either.
Yeah, rubbing shoulders with the king's. Wasn't Flamsteed the first royal? What's the astronomer at the observatory? Isn't that?
I don't know who's the first, but he was. Yeah,
he was one of them. And
yeah,
so you know, he's rubbing shoulders with some
with the big knobs.
With the big knobs, yeah.
Yes. The one I came across was he wanted to break, you know, he was happy to break the reputation of others, as you touched on. So he continued to publish work, but he published the work of a chap called John Flamsteed, a cataloguer of stars, without his consent. So he actually published some of his work without telling him he was going to do it, which is a bit brutal. So I mentioned just now something else that he's known for is empiricism, or the concept of empirical research, which is about physically making observations rather than just reading books and postulating. Those things are important, but you can't necessarily know something for sure unless you physically witness it. So he did obviously go back and read other people's work and make his own writings for other people to read. But, you know, when people do experiments, even now, and the publishing is funny, we don't always know whether or not those sample sizes, observations, etc., are statistically significant. So that would have been the same thing. How much can you value something? How much can it be measured? How can it be observed and tracked by other people, replicated by other people? And so then how much, if we don't have the work like he had done previously, you know, how much can we say that the results of other people weren't missing huge fundamental premises? So a lot of the stuff that had come before could be revisited and either validated or put to one side, which obviously would have annoyed even more people if they weren't dead. So then it'd be interesting to know, just as a side note, what might have come of a lot of this stuff that needed to be reappraised or was just then considered absolute nonsense. Now, he also had an effect on philosophy. So his work affected quite a lot of philosophers because he'd given new ways of understanding to the natural world, which influenced philosophical thought. So the emphasis on empirical investigation was obviously one thing, and the mathematical reasoning. And these led to different discussions of empiricism and rationalism in philosophy. And so philosophy itself became more scientific and produced a more evidence-based approach to philosophy that hadn't really existed before. So John Locke, who is a philosopher that I actually wrote about in my dissertation, he then went from here and he postulated that all rational beliefs, therefore, should require some form of evidence. And the evidence must give us certainty. So it is required to give us certainty, but it must be, oh, I think I saw that, but one time it was this and one time it was that. It has to be demonstrable, really, and it cannot have any margin for error. But again, beliefs can be rational, even if they're just beliefs, if what we have has a lot of support. And he postulated something called the epistemological gap, which is the gap between what we can absolutely know and the things that are very, very likely, but we will never know for sure. So theory over time, the epistemological gap could get smaller as science, knowledge and things advance, but there will always be things that we can only postulate because we cannot know for certain. And then David Hume, who was known for his skepticism and philosophical empiricism, he said that true knowledge only comes from or is primarily from sensory experience and empirical evidence. So that these are all things, and he's obviously a little bit more recent. I meant to write the dates of a bit. David Hume is a lot more recent. So as Philippa mentioned, he was knighted by Queen Anne in 1705, which again is a mark of sort of the acknowledgement and the respect he had within not just science but the wider community. And he died, yes, in the 20th of March, 1784. And he was buried with full honours at Westminster Abbey. So again, it's a demonstration of if you're buried at Westminster Abbey, you've made it, haven't you?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, so if you want to find him, he's near Chaucer and the astronomy John Herschel, and the inscription on his tomb reads. So again, we look at this to see how he was perceived, even within his own lifetime, not just posh. Sometimes we look posthumously at people and go, oh, they were quite good, weren't they? But even within his own time. So it says, diligent, sagacious, and faithful in his expositions of nature, antiquity, and the holy scriptures, he vindicated by his philosophy the majesty of God mighty and good, and expressed the simplicity of the gospel in his manners. Mortals rejoice that there has existed such and so great an ornament of the human race. I'd like to point out at this point that Philippa has got this image because I'm too shit to do that. So she obviously thought,
isn't it glorious?
And it's huge. This is the the screen just before you get into the choir at Westminster Abbey. He's so prominent.
Look at that.
And it's glorious and it's huge.
Here he is on the world,
utterly majestic.
Yeah. So again, to me, all these things indicate what was, you know, how.
What I love as well is the screen looks so kind of medieval, and then you've got this like modernity, and the kind of the time that he's living at with that in that scientific revolution, the medieval early modern world and their sciences, are in many ways being swept away by Newton and his forebears. I think there's something really, but they're also recognizing and leaning on the things they've had before. There's something really apt about the way that looks to me. Maybe I've just been romantic.
And because he talks about standing on the, he's probably quoting somebody else because it's sort of a theme that comes up, but isn't it this sort of standing on the shoulders of giants?
Yeah,
he sees himself as that, so that's interesting. That
he
sort of
believes that he was put on Earth to make these discoveries or impart this knowledge and this information. He has,
he lived at a time where babies born 2 months early don't live.
I mean, in fact, when you said that,
now.
When you were talking about his extreme prematurity, my first thought was, or is that his mum saying that he was born early because otherwise she was very pregnant when she got married? But that's not the case because his parents were securely married. Like that kind of, he was 3 months early, was he? Or were you 3 months pregnant when you got married? Like, because that's at that age, that can't be.
Yeah. And he sounds like he was tiny, or like you say, but that's what his mum reported, that he was tiny. And he lives and does all the things he does.
The spirit was meant to be there.
He does look a little bit like he's in a bath, though.
Which is, to be honest, ideal.
Warm
Eternity in a bubble bath. Yes, please. Sign me up.
Yeah. And
sign me
lighting.
Bring me bonbons and I'll sit in the bath.
Bonbons, champagne, I would like.
Yeah. Okay, so he was noted as a natural philosopher and almost a national hero, really. And he literally laid the foundations for how science is studied, even obviously still today. And as far as we can see going forward, the laws of motion and gravity underpin modern physics and engineering. And he believed that he was there to decode the word of God. So all these things were codes that had been put in that were to be discovered. So that's why, and he got that from studying both the scriptures and nature. And so he was quite religious, despite, this sort of this really scientific background. And nowadays, a lot of people don't want to mix, or it has been probably a theme, science and religion too much, because obviously people like science to really have to be able to explain stuff, and sometimes there are things that are a bit more supernatural or theological don't necessarily have that, and some people really warm to that because, you know, worshipping a deity obviously is a great example of that, but some people are very scientific and, you know, it's straight down and they can't mix the two. So but for him, theology and mathematics were all tied together. They were part of the same project, and he used that to discover this single system which demonstrated how the world works and helps people to understand how the world works. So sort of on a personal level, for me, I really appreciate that, or I really like that, because he kind of bridged this gap between people who only believe science and, like, so they will only believe things, which is observing something, as mentioned, like you can see if you give this person a drug, it will help get them better. You can add water to lithium and you can see a massive chemical reaction. So these are observable things, whereas a lot of things that we talk about in theology aren't necessarily visible, but gravity isn't visible. But we still know that it's there and it functions and it has this purpose, you know. So things that, you know, motion's visible if you see a ball rolling down a hill, but you might not necessarily physically be able to see a breeze if it isn't moving something. But it doesn't mean that it's not there. It's capable of moving something. It just isn't moving something at the time. But that doesn't mean that it's not there and it doesn't exist. So it kind of overlaps the two. If you're, you know, you might say you're very scientific, but you're still believing in things that aren't necessarily visible, and vice versa. So to me, it's a really great way to sort of bridge this gap. And I think that's really quite sort of, it's very interesting and unifying. So he was also an inspiration, obviously, to a lot of other scientists, not just in terms that they had to apply his principles because there they were, but they sort of looked at him as a really good role model. So, for example, without calculus and the law of gravitation, Albert Einstein, oh God, this is another one, would not have been able to develop the theory of relativity. Fuck me, I've tried to describe this. So general relativity is the theory that explains how gravity works. And so this has enabled a lot more inventions of a number of technologies, such as GPS, which often doesn't work for me. You'll be massively unsurprised to hear. Nuclear power, radar appliances, so space and shit, and cathode ray televisions, which sounds like something really 1960s, but without that, your TV would be really blurry. This would be really blurry. So, and then of course, predictions. So we talked before about predictions, but and how you had to take those and what might happen through what we do have, and we might not be able to know because we haven't observed it yet, but predictions that have been made of things that do happen. So it allows us to predict incredible happenings in cosmology and astrophysics, things like neutron stars, black holes, gravitational waves. And these are the things that we can use in the absence of observable empirical evidence, until the evidence may come along later on to prove that that's the case. But you can keep replicating that and it's useful. And so the underpinnings again with this of empiricism. Not to forget, of course, the work he did with the mint and saving the currency, which obviously Kat's talked about. So really, really important. And very tight. And obviously as well, we have things like, we've had a lot of media. So we have things like this, we have podcasts, we have TV, we have books, we have all these things where, you know, we've seen him used for entertainment, for want of a better expression. Obviously he's heavily used as part of educational tools. And so he's very relevant. I mean, he's just entirely relevant constantly and will continue to be so. And one last thing, he's mentioned or referenced or noted in a song, a love song called "I Want to Do Math with You" by Ninja Sex Party, who wrote the Dragon Slayer song that I attribute to Kat. And the line is "Calcul you and calcul me, that makes calculus."
I love that. And you, in what you just said, I'm just going to flag up that I have so many terms, Catherine, that I need to Google, because when you from relativity up into Ninja Sex Party, there were just a whole bunch of words that I've heard, but I don't know what they mean.
Well, there we go. So that's the legacy in a reasonable amount of ness.
I love this painting as well, because it looks like he's going, look at this fucking thing.
I know. Do you know?
Good
I have
fucking
been
thing.
looking at that. Both hands are pointing at something, and I'm not. I need to look up the full image now.
Kind of that mouth he's got. That's like, have you
Ramsey.
fucking seen this
He's
guy?
like, I'm with
Ramsey
dickhead.
just
isn't
out
he?
of that shot.
Yeah,
and he's
yeah.
head.
He's like,
This fucking motherfucker.
yeah. I also think that for some reason the painters put the fold of his cloak in a rather unfortunate place.
I mean, that's not a cloak. That is a dressing gown.
Dressing
He is in his
gown,
gym
yeah.
jams, which I
He's in
love
his
for
gym
him.
jams.
He's in a bath in his gym jams. Isaac, baby.
Maybe this
Man
is
after
where
my own heart.
Noel Howard got his inspiration from.
There we go. He just
So
he
another
keeps
legacy
forgiving.
of Isaac Newton, the
keeps
dress
forgiving.
sense of Noel Howard.
Well, pals, this is our pre-recorded episode, and we're going
And
to do
look, we
the
can't
usual...
blame the audience anymore for how long it takes us because we're
No,
doing 1 hour
it's all on us.
35.
If you
Philippa, what's happening next week?
Do you mean this week or next week?
What's happening next
The week.
episode?
Next episode.
Next episode.
So next episode, we are talking Edward Jenner, the man who invented vaccinations and lived in a place that I had to work for a year. And I say had to because I didn't like it. But I wasn't in the beautiful village of Berkeley where he actually lived. I was on the nuclear power station site of Berkeley, which is different. Not far away, but felt like it.
Is that
Felt
why
like
you
I was
glow
on the
in
ends
the
of
dark?
the earth. Hey?
Is that why you glow in the dark?
One of the reasons.
I don't
reasons.
trust nuclear power. I don't trust.
So clearly,
Hello.
no one's going to want to miss that, are they? So what I suggest you do is I suggest that you make sure you are subscribed to the channel. If you think you are, have a check. Also hit the bell icon beside the subscribe button and select all in the drop down that will appear. That will tell you when we're next either uploading or going live. The next one will be alive. If you like what you see, you can come and support us by giving us Winnebagos at www.buymeacoffee.com/had podcast. That's also the place to come if you would like to join close friends on Instagram. That is a place where,
by the sounds of things,
it might get spicier as the rants come in and as we start naming and shaming to a select few who have paid for the privilege. But it's also currently a place where Catherine finds some depraved history memes.
I'm a bit slack lately,
and puts them up for people who are wanting to see them. We have got merch. You've seen the muggy already. There's Philippa's modelling the History After Dark t-shirt. Catherine somewhere has got a rough beaver.
I have. I was going to put that on today, but I was rushing about and I couldn't find it.
So if you want, for your rough beaver merch, come and check it out. For your Timmy the Problem merch, for your History After Dark merch, for your No Feet for Free on the internet merch, come and check out our merch store. What else? Is that it?
That's it. You can follow us all individually as well if you don't already. Because this week, while this is going out, we're not here. I'm on tour, the Amberlin tour. So you can follow me at British_history_tours on Instagram because I'll be posting there highlights of our days.
Historical collaborator.
And I'm either Cat Marchant, Katrina Marchant, or Reading the Past because I didn't think this was going to be a job. So I just did things and didn't make them any sense of uniformity.
You can change them. You could change the on your Insta and your TikTok. You can change it. For fuck's sake, if I managed to do it, then I'm sure you can.
You managed to do it and then get a defunct account that you then had to duplicate.
But then I made another one, and that worked.
Yeah. I mean, I'll have a look, but I cocked it up, guys. I cocked it up. My links are in my link tree. So if you come to History After Dark on YouTube, find the link tree, bada bing, bada boom, click them. I want you following. You haven't got to come looking for me, have you? Because I'm there. I'm there in your following list.
Good.
I fucked it up. I'm going to be honest. But we move.
It matters. It matters not. We all find
everything. Thanks for hanging out with us, pals. And we hope you've enjoyed this pre-record. We're looking forward to seeing your comments, and we're looking forward to being back to our regularly scheduled live because we do enjoy seeing the chats. So this is not going to be a permanent thing. This is a stopgap when we're all running around the country and doing things. This live is the format we enjoy, and it will be alive. But
we'd rather give you something than just leave too many gaps.
Exactly. And we hope you have enjoyed. I think, is it time for me to count us out?
It is.
Right then, tatty bye. Take care of yourselves. Behave. If you can't be good, be careful. And if you can't be careful, don't get caught. We'll see you all in our next one. We're going to leave in 3, 2, 1. Bye.
Bye.